Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to our special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. This is our November Picks of the Month episode, where we're going to look at some undervalued and underappreciated cards that you might want to put on your radar and think about picking up. Many of these are due to increase in value potentially. Now, the theme for this month is the set Legends. One of my favorite sets from the old days. It was a large set, and there were a lot of amazing cards in it. Now, there are cards on the reserve list, of course, cards that aren't on the reserve list. We're going to look at some of both today, and we're going to look at cards at different price points for different viewers. Now, a quick reminder, these Picks of the Month videos do go out to the Gold patrons first, a couple days early. So by the time you see this on YouTube, prices may have shifted just a little bit. I'm not anticipating anything major or anything like that, but just keep that in mind when we go over the values of the cards today. With that being said, let's get into it. We're going to start off with some of the white cards, and we're going to begin with land tax. $37.99 currently, and a couple things to remember about this card. It's an uncommon, and it is not on the reserve list. It has been reprinted. You can find cheaper versions of the card, but today we're just talking about the Legend set, and if you're interested in collecting some of the real old school early expansions, then you may want to gravitate to cards like this one, the original version. Now, it's a little expensive, sure, between $35 and $40, but it's an excellent cube card. It's even a very good commander card. A lot of people see this card, and if you haven't played with it, you might not at first really appreciate the power level behind it. It's a one-drop enchantment, just hits the battlefield, and then at that point forward, your opponent has a tough decision to make every turn, basically. Do they pull ahead of you on land count? And if they do allow you to trigger this, is that going to be enough for them to start falling behind, just being attritioned out? Now, the reason I say that is because if you can activate this, you go into your library, you pull 3 basic lands. This can do so much for you. It can be color fixing. It can just ensure you hit your land drops. It thins your deck. You don't even have to play the lands. You can just hang on to them and then do this again next time and just continue to thin your deck. Discard some extra lands if you need to, right? And a lot of decks would really appreciate this type of ability. So overall, one of my favorite cards, probably from the set, definitely in the color white in the set. And I do think it's still reasonably priced. And even if this did get a reprint, which I don't really see happening anytime soon, but if it did happen, I just really don't think the reprint would impact these original prices all that much. All right, let's move on to something a little cheaper now, but it's very unique. Presence of the Master at $2.48. Another card that is not on the reserve list. In fact, it wasn't uncommon like the previous card. But there's something really unusual about this. Even though this did get a reprint in Urza Saga, this version has art with the likeness of Albert Einstein on it. Not to mention planets from our solar system appear to be in the art as well. This is not something you see in Magic today. Shortly after this card came out, they started to take the stance that they were going to avoid real-world people, places, or even mythology. So you're not going to see cards with Albert Einstein on them anymore. And because of that, this is a very unique find and should be a part of a lot of people's collection, especially if you appreciate the history of Magic. The card itself, I mean, is playable, especially if you have a play group of Commander players and somebody in there likes enchantments. It does shut down enchantments until they can get rid of this card. That could be pretty sweet against some strategies. But even aside from that, this card's more about the flavor and the art. All right, let's look at our first reserve list card today. It's a little more expensive, Land Equilibrium, as we move into blue. $89.47. Okay, it's expensive, but let's talk about this card for a second. 2 blue and 2, enchantment. If your opponent controls at least as much land as you do, he or she must sacrifice a land for each land he or she puts into play. Now, think about some of these commander decks that can use a lot of mana rocks. You can really start to choke your opponent out. As a matter of fact, this is a very popular commander card in certain strategies. Usually a little more cutthroat, spiky decks, and that could be 1v1 commander. It could be your normal multiplayer commander, but this is a really powerful, aggressive commander card a lot of the time. So it sees play in those circles. It's a reserve list rare. $89.47. You know what? It actually sounds reasonable when you put it that way. And I don't have the money to invest right now into cards like this, but if I did, I would pick one up just to have, because I do think this is going to go up. If you're a Commander player that thinks maybe some point I might want to use this card, it's not going to get any better. I would just go ahead and pick it up. This is the type of card that I think will see a buyout maybe sometime within the next year or two. It's been under the radar, but I do think that will change at some point. Reset. Okay, we're back to uncommons now with $18.83 for Reset. It's just a good card though. Even though it is uncommon, it's not reserve list or anything like that, but it has never been reprinted, and it's a difficult card to reprint, especially at this power level. Not to say that it will never happen, but it's going to be hard to make this fit somewhere. It's an interesting card, again, for casual play, because you can really surprise your opponent. If you got a couple blue available, you can throw this out and just untap all your land and perhaps use some effects that are already present on the battlefield, so you can kind of fake out your opponent. It's really cool. It's a unique card. You don't see a lot of things like this at all anymore, and again, it's just getting harder and harder to find. Next is Telekinesis. It's a reserve list card, $46.50, 2 blue. It's an instant. Target creature deals no damage during combat this turn. Here's where it gets interesting though. Creature becomes tapped and may not untap as normal during its controller's next 2 untap phases. Okay, so we're kind of used to seeing cards that freeze a creature, keep them tapped for an extra turn, right? That's pretty standard nowadays. But for 2 blue, being able to keep it tapped for 2 cycles is actually pretty interesting. And of course, it also nullifies damage. So if for some reason you forgot to play it before combat or something like that, you can still get the benefit out of it. So very interesting card, actually. So I like the idea behind this, and it is very playable for that casting cost. And because of that, I do think it is a card that could go up in value and also could be a target of a buyout in the future. All right, let's move on to black with Hell's Caretaker at $19.76. This is a rare, but it's not on the reserve list. It has been reprinted in Chronicles. It's been in 9th edition with new art. But the reason, again, I'm gravitating back to these Legends cards and why they do hold value, even though you can find cheaper versions, is if you want this art on Hell's Caretaker with that nice black border, this is the only place you can get it. Like Chronicles did a reprint with this art, but it was white border. 9th edition, of course, had new art. So if you want this version of the card that you see on the screen right here, you gotta pay 15, 20 bucks for it at this point. And that's not going to change, I don't think, even if they did reprint it again. Now, the card itself is actually a lot of fun to use, and it interacts well with a lot of different things. It's great with enters the battlefield effects. It's great with leaves the battlefield effects. It just creates a lot of shenanigan opportunities. And yeah, it's a little fragile. A 1/1 for 4. Keep that in mind. I mean, it will be a target, but you can do a lot of fun stuff with this card. So one of my favorite cards, again, from back in the day that I used to play with, you play this with like Cabal Ghouls and bring things in and out, and then they get bigger and bigger. The ghouls get bigger. You know, it's just a lot of different random things you can do with Hell's Caretaker. The Wretched, $6, another rare. Also a card that is not on the reserve list and has been reprinted. This is another one we saw in Chronicles. And this one takes a little setup, right? Like, it's not an amazing card. It costs 5. It's a 2/5. You attack with it. If your opponent, for some reason, blocks with it, you get to take their creature. Most of the time, they'll just take the 2 damage, right? Or they have a blocker that can kill the creature, and then in that case, they won't lose their creature. So it takes a very special setup. Like, sometimes you can play this with, like, a lore effect or something like that. But the reason I mentioned it more than anything, what pushed it over the edge for me, is that Christopher Rush art is incredible, right? I would play this in a commander deck just because of that art. I might want to show it off, especially the black border version. Again, you can get a white border version, a lot cheaper even in Chronicles, but that version there looks beautiful, and I think over time, people will really appreciate this and it'll go up. All right, let's move on to red with Gravity Spear, and this is a reserve list card. Like all reserve list cards, this one's a rare. This one, though, feels like a steal to me. And I talked about this in a previous Picks of the Month video a while back. It was probably a little cheaper than I'd imagine, but for $40, this thing is still a steal. Like, not only is it a reserve list from Legends, but the card is actually very, very playable. I mean, a red and 2, it's an enchant world, so keep that in mind, but all creatures lose flying ability. You ground everything, and it combos so well with a lot of different things. Cards that prevent damage from the ground, cards that damage things on the ground, right? There's just a lot of different avenues you can go with this. It's just a really unique card for Commander. Winds of Change, $14.88. This is an uncommon, and of course, being so, it's not on the reserve list. So that's good news. It has been reprinted a few times before. You can find cheaper copies here. But again, that original copy has really striking art, and it's a really cheap way to get this effect at just 1 red mana. All right, let's look at our lone green card for the day, Storm Seeker at $5.17. So it's an uncommon. It's been reprinted. Another card you can find in Chronicles, as a matter of fact. But again, that art, the black border, Mark Poole art, I always love. There's another card coming up with Mark Poole art we'll be looking at. But this one is a green card that can do direct damage. You don't see that every day. That reason alone, I put it on the list. I think as time goes on, more and more people will appreciate this card. Angus Mackenzie, as we move into multicolor, this is on the reserve list, $109.97. Okay, this one's a little more expensive. It's not for everybody out there. But if you're a Commander player and you have a little money to invest in something, maybe you like Pillow Fort style decks, I think this is actually a good pickup. I think we're looking at a card that maybe a year, 2 years down the road is going to be a $200, $250 card. The reason I say that is because it's reserve list, it's getting harder and harder to find, and it's actually very playable in Commander. It's actually a really good card there. And so many of these other Gold Legends cards are aggressively going up in value right now. The cheaper ones are being targeted for buyouts and such. Not to say that this couldn't get targeted. That could happen as well. But a lot of the cheaper ones are being targeted right now. So it only stands to reason that this card is going to increase in value probably relatively quickly. Lady Evangela, as we move into another multicolor card. And this is another reserve list, $24.95 right now. So I just mentioned that all of these Gold Legends cards have been hot. This one is good, $25, not a bad price tag, but so many of them are already being bought out and being sold for higher. This is going to happen to this card. This will be the target of a buyout probably sooner than later. It's just going to fall in line with all the others. Right now it's flying under the radar a little bit, but you throw in the fact that you got that Mark Poole art that's very unique with a rainbow and everything. Like, this card is definitely going to become hot at some point this year. I have no doubt. The card itself, not super powerful. It's probably the only reason people haven't paid too much attention to it up until this point, but expect this one to go up very soon. Ramirez DiPietro. Okay, this one's interesting because it's an uncommon, so it's not on the reserve list, only $8.40. This actually spiked recently. You used to be able to get this card much, much cheaper, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, it feels a little weird saying this is still undervalued considering it has jumped up in price, but you do have to keep in mind this does count as a human pirate, so it does fit into Commander Pirate decks and such, which have been hot, of course, as Ixalan released. But maybe even when Rivals comes out, might even get hotter. So I do think this card is going to go up because of that. Novo Pentacle. All right, this is another reserve list card, $13.97. The reason I included this is because I think it's a really cool Commander card. Great political card. Like, you pay 4 for this artifact, then you can activate it by paying 3 and tap. Redirect damage done to you from one source to target creature of opponent's choice. So you can work with tandem with someone else at the table to get rid of someone else's creature, basically. And hopefully they don't stab you in the back in the process. But what they can do is you say, okay, look, we need to get rid of this creature. Why don't you go ahead and attack me? I'm not going to block. I'll just use this, and then you can deal the damage to the creature instead. And there you have it. So I just think it's really cool. Just a really fun card. And again, another one under the radar. Just another interesting reserve list card. And our last card for today is Pendelhaven at $13.49. Another uncommon, another card that's been reprinted. You can find this in Time Spiral, as a matter of fact. So yes, technically this is modern legal and sees modern play, right? So as a matter of fact, this card, out of all the cards we've talked about today, sees the most competitive play. You're going to find this in Legacy, as well as modern versions of the Elf decks and the Infect decks. So you've probably seen this and are familiar with this card if you play in those formats. It's very prominent. And again, getting that original version of the card, a lot of players desire that. So $13.49 still feels really reasonable right now for this card. All right, that wraps things up. Before we go, just a quick reminder, though, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. You can find out how to get some classic art tokens that we've created. Also, you'll see our Amazon links below. If you make any purchases through those links, we'll get a small percentage back. And at the top of the show, you heard me mention Flipside Gaming. They have a promo code for our viewers, so you can save there. They're pre-ordering right now for Iconic Masters, which is right around the corner. So check that out and everything else they have on their site. And that is it for today. Now, next month, December's episode, we're coming back to Legends. I have 15 more cards because this set is so crazy. We're going to talk about 15 cards that we didn't talk about today in the December video. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.